calls and interview some super duper intriguing guests. Just go to irnchat.com to interact and listen to the shows live, or go to inceptionradionetwork.com and look up The Outlander, and you can read and listen to all of the shows for free. Today is Friday, January 12th, 2018. So tonight, The Outlander will be live. Blasting off with some UFO reports. The first report, a sighting in Salem, Missouri. This occurred December 2nd, 2017. In brief, the witness states saw a silver object flying about 200 miles per hour in a straight line, north to south. In more detail, they state, I was cutting firewood on my property. Oh, that's a manly thing to do. When I noticed a silvery object in the sky moving north to south at about 200 miles per hour and 500 feet above the ground. There was no noise coming from it. My best guess in size is 60 feet long and 30 feet high. Cylinder-shaped, was seen on December 2nd, 2017 at 4:23 p.m. I took photos of it with my cell phone, so it's time-stamped. I showed the photos to a MUFON field investigator, and he said we should turn this in to MUFON. And so they did. That's pretty cool. The next UFO sighting. This occurred in Kansas. And this happened January 8th, 2018. In brief, large glowing rod about the size of an aspirin turned on side, hovering between two cloud banks. Ooh, another sneaky UFO in the clouds. In more detail, the witness states, driving between Pratt and Dodge City, Kansas, heading west at dusk. Clouds were in a horizontal banded pattern. Noticed large glowing yellow rod of light that I thought was an airplane exhaust trail being lit by the sun. Very bright, but it didn't change or dissipate or move with the clouds. Kept watching it and realized it wasn't moving or changing. It was several miles away, and to the southwest noticed an airplane exhaust trail headed towards it, coming from the east, at which time the object ceased to be glowing yellow and was gray, but kept its shape. The object began to move away, keeping a vertical bearing, staying in front of the airplane. It kept its rod-like shape, but appeared smaller as it moved away. After object was out of sight, multiple jet engine exhaust trails crisscrossed the area for about 30 minutes. I guess they were dusting after it. The last unusual thing was a long exhaust trail coming up from the horizon after the small jet engine trails. Exhaust trail moved slowly and directly vertical, more like a missile taken off than a plane exhaust. The initial glowing object seemed quite large, considering it was very far away and much larger than the jet trails from the crisscrossing planes that came after the rod left. The original rod had clear borders and did not dissipate like a chemical trail from a plane would, and it had a definite top and bottom border, both glowing and when turned gray. I was approximately halfway between Pratt, Kansas and Dodge City, Kansas, with the object to the west and south of my position. I stopped to try and photograph it when it was gray rod moving away, but my camera would not zoom in enough to clearly see the object. Based on the distance, I believe the object was quite large and sat on top of the lowest band of clouds. The whole episode lasted close to an hour. Wow. From the time I noticed the object until the last vertical chemtrail. Attached picture is not of the object I saw, but the closest image I found on the internet that looked like the object. However, the object I saw never moved into a horizontal or slanted position, but stayed perfectly vertical the entire time, even while moving away. The next UFO sighting in Knoxville, Georgia. This is a UFO blast from the past. This happened November 1st, 2009. In brief, large silent black rectangle circled my 11 acres. In more detail, the witness states, me and 3 other people were sitting inside my single-wide mobile home on my 11 acres of land. We were talking when I heard a very soft, almost inaudible hum. Recently, tornadoes had gone through my county, and I was quite weary of storms, so I walked to my back door and opened it to check the weather. There was no sound outside, but a lot of cloud-to-cloud lightning in the distance. I stood there a moment and noticed something moving above my tree line, about 100 yards or so away. I couldn't see it very well at that moment, just a black silhouette against the lightning in the background, and no thunder. It was shaped like a black domino the size of a few football fields, floating silently, horizontally at the speed of an ultralight, perhaps even slower, but much bigger. Its altitude must have been as high as 2 or 3 fully grown pine trees. The object was directly in front of me, traveling from left to my right. One of my friends walked over to me, and I asked them what they thought it was. After a moment of watching, if we could see the rear of the object, I'm assuming the rear since it was going away from us now, there were 2 red or orange light-like engines from a Star Wars movie. No glow, just the color. Like it was a red-orange sticker stuck on the rear. That's kind of my kid is an honor roll student, probably said. Okay, maybe it said something about the president. Who knows? I don't know if they were engines, though. They were the complete height of the object, which I'm guessing was about a 2-story building, as if you put your thumb in the center of a rectangle, and to the left and right side of your thumb was red, orange light. And where your thumb is, it was black, like the rest of the object. I see. My friend looked at me, and we both agreed we never seen anything like that before. Warner Robins Air Force Base is about 30 minutes away, so we see planes and such all the time. We watched as it tilted 45 degrees like a plane banking left, but it stayed on the same course it had been on. We watched the back end of it, the engines, until it passed behind some trees. We could only make out the shape of the object with each flash of lightning in the distance, of which there was an abundant amount. Awestruck, we walked back in the living room and started to explain to the other people hanging out what we just saw. I was ecstatic, telling them how I've never seen anything like that before. A few minutes later, less than 5, while we were describing the object, I heard the same vague hum. I asked if anyone else could hear the hum. They could not. Excited, I ran back outside, but there was nothing there. Disappointed, I walked around to the front of my mobile home to take a look, and to my surprise, there it was. Now, why didn't anybody else follow you? Oh, my goodness. Okay. A giant black rectangle moving very slowly about 5 acres away across my field, above more tree lines. Coming from my left to my right again, as if it had circled my property while we were inside, it was very large, completely silent. I could only hear the hum both times inside the mobile home. The object was horizontal again, and I could see the front, since it was so far to my left. There were no lights of any kind in the front, bottom, and side. I watched it slowly crossing my field. A few minutes passed, and I realized the other 3 had come outside, and they were watching it, not saying a word. Oh, thank goodness somebody else saw it. Or others. The object made a slow turn to the right, never banking, as if it was following a giant half circle. Realizing I was not alone and others were witnessing the same thing, I began jumping up and down, screaming, "What the expletive is that? What is that? Do y'all expletives see that?" No one said a word. We watched it for a few more minutes until it was going away from us in the direction of Warner Robins Air Force Base. That's when we could see the rear, and there were the red-orange engines again. It never made a sound and moved away to slowly be able to stay in the air for its rectangular shape and size. Way too slowly, I think they meant. Perhaps it was some weird blimp I've never seen before. The next day, my friend that saw it the first time with me refused to talk about it, saying over and over it was just a C-130. Though it moved way too slow, and C-130s are super loud that close. The other two swore it was an alien craft. One friend, and my future wife, claimed to be very frightened during the whole ordeal, which made me laugh, though it could have been, not doubting that possibility. I didn't even think about aliens. I was thinking it was some piece of technology the U.S. government had that we have not been told about yet. Something similar to how people thought the stealth bomber years ago was an alien craft. I never felt endangered the entire time. I just found it so odd that a day or two later, my friend, that first one that saw it, was so reluctant to talk about the experience, saying it was just a C-130, even though all the rest of that night he was flabbergasted as the rest of us. That was in 2009. At the time of me writing this, it is 2018, and I have never seen the object again. I apologize for the description being so lengthy. Are you kidding me? We love lengthy. I love these older UFO blasts from the past because people take time to think about it and use their words. Yeah, they use their words and periods and commas and exclamation points. And you know what? I had seen probably the most incredible UFO in my life with one of my best friends. She would not talk about it for a year. And right after it happened, she even told me, "You will never get me to talk about this." I was like, "What?" And then the UFO showed up again as if to scare her some more. It was just wild. Anyways, moving on. UFO sighting in Los Angeles, California, January 6, 2018. In brief, they say it happened during a commercial of the Falcons versus the Rams overlooking Hollywood. Ooh, this is juicy. It happened at 3 hours and 18 minutes remaining mark during the playoff game of the Falcons versus the Rams. I have it recorded. NFL panned over Hollywood with a camera that was placed behind the Hollywood sign. I have it all recorded on DVR. There are multiple crafts that are flying like nothing I have ever seen in my 41 years of life. It is totally insane. And I was in the U.S. Navy. They change direction. They go supersonic. They zigzag. They appear, then they disappear. Nothing in my life ever has compared to what I have been watching on repeat for the last hour. I tried multiple times to take a video with my TV with my phone, but it comes out horrible. It's all on DVR, or all you have to do is watch the commercial I'm referring to. The next UFO sighting occurred in Dallas, Texas, September 22nd, 2017. In brief, they state, while filming a strobing orb or craft in the night sky, I also captured a very fast disc, very close, and it changed directions. I did not notice the disc until I reviewed the video. In more detail, they state, I am sending a video I filmed Friday p.m. around 10 p.m. in Dallas, Texas. That's the first time I have used that camera in a long time, and the timestamp is 2009. Ignore that part. So first time using that of a couple of UFOs. The first one is obvious. This is not the first time I've seen a similar strobing light in the evening in that direction. I'm guessing it was just northeast of DFW Airport, as in several of other videos I took, you can see planes flying into the airport. By the way, I have several more videos of this strobing light if you want to see those too. I called my son, who was watching a high school football game a few miles closer to the object, and told him to look, and saw it clearly. Strobing, green, blue, red, yellow. Mostly remained still, but he and I both could see it moving up and down and side to side. When I watched the videos on my computer, I saw something streak by. So I rewound and hit play, pause quickly, and repeatedly. You can clearly see what looks like a fast moving disk or orb. It appears to be heading in a downward direction, but then it looks to turn and go up at an angle. Lasts about a second. Look around at about the 143 mark. In comes into the screen to the left and above the strobing orb. You may not notice it coming across, but look to the bottom right of the screen, just above the street lights. I also slowed that part of the video to 10% speed and changed the lighting so you can see it more clearly. When I saw the light flash by on my screen, it reminded me of another odd experience I had January 29th, 2017. I was taking a photo of the moon for my girlfriend. It was a smiley face. When I snapped the picture, I noticed a light whiz by. I looked at the photo I took, and there is what appears to be a series of lights, which looks like a craft of some kind. I submitted that event and photos to MUFON. I've tried to submit the videos to no avail. Please contact me for these as well, as they are very compelling video of unknown crafts in the sky, both from Dallas, Texas, as well as Crested Butte. Interesting. All right. This next UFO sighting comes from Cohill, Ontario, January 9th, 2018. In brief, they state, daughter got up after 6 a.m. She went back to bed. I was looking out window, saw a bright light coming from west towards east. Straight path going really fast. No flashing lights on object. Look like a large star. In more detail, they state, bright night, clear. I was looking at stars. Bright object flying in from west into east, much closer than the stars. No flashing lights and moving fast. I've seen them here before. It seems like they come from the west or north or west moving east to the southeast. 6:15 is 6:16 a.m. approximately. Could have been less time. This area has a lot of magnetite. In the 50s, a man did a study of anomalies in the Cohill Bancroft sheets. Mining study in Ontario, Canada. Not sure if magnetite has anything to do with UFOs. Anything is possible. Saw the same type of star-like bright light in early spring. I was outside about 10:30 p.m. The light saw that I was watching. Get this, it projected to the side of it, like an opening, its own portal, in which I saw a star system. I went into it and it disappeared. I have seen many UFOs over my lifespan. These are the latest two. Okay, I was a little confusing at the end, but sounded pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, this next one. Black triangle sighting in Ordfordville, Wisconsin. Okay. This occurred January 8th, 2018. In brief, they state, heading towards Broadhead, seen helicopter, normal thing. Then I notice another coming from my right. As I get past the tree line, there it was to my left, about 300 to 400 feet up and 600 to 1,000 feet away. In more detail, the witness states, heading west on Highway 11 to Broadhead, seen the Greene County helicopter hovering over Broadhead, pretty normal. They always come around. Then to my left, I seen another chopper heading south, going directly over me. Wanting to get a better look, I turned to look for the helicopter, and the tree line ends at this point when I see it. I don't know what this was, but it was at least 4 times the size of the chopper and had 2 extremely bright white blue, like daylight bulbs, lights coming from the rear that flashed every second or so. Now, I grew up hanging around the airport from time to time, and there was no green or red lights, and it was way too big and moving way too slow to be a plane, plus the size of the lights would have been the entire wing of a passenger jet. I have no idea what I saw, but 2 choppers were watching too, and the one followed it all the way to the Illinois border. I guess because the chopper flew south, stopped for a minute, then turned around and headed back. Everyone can give me garbage for not having my phone, but I was just going to grab some food quick, and this is not a joke. Okay, all right. We won't give you crap. I understand. All right, this next sighting happened in San Antonio, Texas, January 8th, 2018. Thought it was a very low helicopter at first. Then, when it got closer, I could see how large it was, and the shape was like a large triangle. It was going too slow. It would have fallen from sky if it were a plane. There were 7 to 8 all over the neighborhood. Wow, in more detail, I saw what I first thought was a helicopter. Then, as it came in closer, I saw it was huge and triangle shaped. It was flying so low and slow that it defied the laws of gravity. And if it were just a place, it should have fallen from the sky. If it were just a place, why do people write like this? I looked around and saw 7 to 8 others at various heights all over the neighborhood and different distances. I took a video, and the video showed it right about the trees. However, the lights did not show up on the one closest to me. There were some that did, I think they mean. I see it with my eyes, but that showed up on the video, along with some bizarre footage of weird, unidentifiable things. There was a large bat-like creature flying around one or two of the crafts. This proceeded until midnight, but none came as close as the one that flew right above me in my backyard. Okay, wow. Very, very fascinating, I have to say. All right, moving on. We're going to read you a story about some UFOs over China Lake that were analyzed. This comes from a post online from December 11th, 2017. And the article reads, in October 2017, a curious post appeared on the Facebook page of Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert featuring Heather Wade. It showed an apparent daylight scent of a UFO in the desert with a helicopter hovering overhead. The text to accompany the photo read, I've been holding on to these pictures for 10 years, and it's time I showed someone. I took pictures of this thing in July 2007 on our radar test range in the Mojave Desert. I've always been nervous to show anyone, but here you go. My curiosity piqued. I dropped the post of this message, whom I shall call Keith Bradshaw, real name on file. A note in a private message asking for more details. Checking the next day, the post had been removed, but Keith did reply to my private message. Keith made it clear from the beginning that he was worried about releasing these photos as they had been taken illegally, and he regretted posting one of them on Facebook. It did, however, tell me that they were taken at China Lake in California at about 11:30 a.m. Oh, okay, so it wasn't in China, it was over China Lake. Got it. Okay, over the next several days, Keith and I exchanged numerous private messages on Facebook, and he eventually told me the backstory behind the taking of the photos in question. He also sent me 5 photographs in total. Here is what Keith had to say. I grew up in a town called Ridgecrest, which is a U.S. naval base in the Mojave Desert. As a kid, it was very easy to get onto the base, and everyone in town had passes that would allow you through the gates to get to school and swimming pools and the movie theater, etc. Everyone knew someone who worked on the base, so you would get to know where the different parts of the base were. They had the bombing range and the radar range. I grew up with a kid who, after high school, joined the Navy. After he retired, he moved back to town, and I got a job working in the civil service on the base, monitoring the radar. He said it was the world's most boring job, but he did tell me about interesting things that went on out there. Things like them having jeeps and tanks scattered all over the desert and then flipping a switch and they would all disappear. Turns out that's what fiber optic camouflage does. People would talk about unbelievable things that turned out to be true. Planes would come from all over the world to use the radar test range out there. I have pictures of that too. Planes with markings from other countries. While I was in between jobs in 2007, I went back to town to visit some of my old friends. While I was in town, I stopped by this friend's house, and after a few drinks, he started telling me how that week he had been monitoring a flying saucer. When I asked him how he knew that's what it was, he told me, first of all, in all the years he had been doing that job, he never had two generals and three other men with top security clearance recording and watching everything he did. He explained how it was very simple. There were two signals on the radar screen. One would appear very low in altitude, go up to a certain higher altitude, and then click off. There would be a countdown for a certain amount of time, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it would click back on. When this happened, the first time the people in the room got very excited. The object on his screen would lower in altitude until it was no longer on radar, move to a different position, and repeat the same thing over and over at different altitudes. All the while, the other signal on the radar screen would remain constant. Curious as to what it was he was monitoring, he asked around. People that he knew who physically worked on the radar range and would see what he was out there told him that, believe it or not, it was a flying saucer. They described it as being shiny like a mirror and smooth like glass all over, inside and out. It had no doors or windows, only a hole cut in the top. I got the idea that the hole had jagged edges, like it was cut with something. They described the inside as only having three small seats surrounded by a bird nest of fiber optic cable. The seats were molded out of the floor rather than attached to the floor. This thing was one piece with no seams anywhere. Keep in mind that description is just a rumor as to what it was like. He didn't actually see it for himself. He just was told that's what it was. Being in between jobs and having nothing to do the next day, I made my way out there. I'm not telling you how I was able to get there, but I will say I walked a very long distance. As I got closer, I could hear a helicopter, so I peeked up over a hill and down in the small valley below, and sure enough, I could see this silver disk out there. There were a few tan-colored trailers and other military vehicles on the north end of the valley. This thing would wobble along close to the ground, very unstable. I don't believe anyone could have been riding on the inside, but got the idea that helicopter was remotely controlling it. It was very wobbly as it moved along close to the ground, and then it would freeze in position, go up to a certain height, and sit there for a few minutes perfectly still. It made no noise that I could hear over the helicopter. It would go back down and wobble to the next position. It looked like whoever was controlling it was having fun with it sometimes, because they would do little tricks with it. Like one edge would be pointing towards the sky, and then it would do a U-shaped flip to the other edge was pointing towards the sky, and then wobble along the valley floor to the ground next to his position. At first I was too afraid to take any pictures, but then it got really close to me, so I started snapping some photos, figuring that if I was going to be caught, I might as well have some pictures. I also took a short video, but then to save space on my camera, I started deleting the blurry pictures. Are you serious? I spent maybe 10 minutes total watching this thing. I then turned around and got out of there as quickly as I could. I took my shirt off, thinking the color of my skin would blend in with my surroundings better than the color of my white shirt. About halfway back, I got scared and hid the camera in the desert. That night, I went back over to my friend's house, and when I told him what I had done, he laughed in disbelief until I told him the path this thing followed from the northwest side to the valley to the southeast. When he realized I was telling the truth, he got very angry and threw a plastic cup at me. Oh, the brutal. He basically chased me out of the house, telling me never to go get those pictures. I let them sit there for 2 days and then went back and got the camera. When I looked at the pictures, there was no video, and I realized that what I thought was a blurry picture was actually a blurry video that I deleted. I still kick myself for that one every time I think about it. A few years later, I went back to town and ran into him at Walmart. He pretended he didn't even know me. This is someone that I have known my whole life. We went to school together and played on the same little league baseball teams. I've been holding on to these pictures ever since. That is all there is. Sorry, it's not more exciting. I really don't know how you would write an article about it. In an attempt to get to the bottom of these alleged UFO photographs, they have been analyzed by 5 different people from around the world, including Jason Gleaves from the UK, and he's of the opinion that they are the genuine article. Dr. Bruce Maccabee from the USA is not sure whether they are fake or real, and the same goes for Tobias Lindgren in Sweden. And the last but not least, Ricardo Vieira and Inajar Kuraski in Brazil left us in no doubt that they believe the photographs in question to be fake. It is therefore the hope of this author and intention that by releasing these photographs here that we may learn more about them. Perhaps other specialists will add their comments to those above, or maybe someone will come forward who can offer testimony to support the authenticity. Whew! All right, that was fascinating. You guys got to check those photos out. Pretty darn cool. Well, I want to thank you all for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Be sure to check out UFOHeadlineNews.com every single day, and also be sure to check out The Outlander every Friday, 8 p.m. Central. And visit theoutlanderscomic.com, my paranormal comic strip that is here on Inception. And if you have experienced anything out of the ordinary and want some level